Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars and Auto House of Naples on what has to be, this has to be peak shit weather. This has to be it. It is unfriggin' believable. I have never, ever felt humidity. Well, but you know what? I say that every year, every damn year. It's the same damn thing. The humidity is absolutely miserable, and today is no exception, and it just feels worse today than it ever has. It really does. It is... It is like life reevaluation time. There is just no way that I can continue to hang out in this place during these months when, the weather is like this. It's just beyond fit for human existence. It's just not something that can be dealt with. And, again, Peter, who sold the business, he's, lighting cigars with his $100 bills. He's jetting around the globe to fantastic places. He is living the life. And here I am in his driveway filming this old Chrysler and dripping from every orifice, to the point that I just need to go home and take a shower after doing this thing. So, this is by far and away peak misery in Naples, Florida. And I just, we're in the middle of August. It's the worst of the months. September's around the corner. It's pretty friggin' bad, but at least you have hope because it ends in BER. And that means October is coming, which means cool weather could emerge. But right now it's hopeless. It's miserable. And frankly, I'd just like to go find a hole somewhere, curl up, and possibly take my own life. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and that's the condition that I'm in. I haven't slept in a couple of days. I don't know why. You would think the whiskey that I use to deal with the coronavirus would help me sleep, but it doesn't. I probably am just laying awake at night pondering the misery that's facing me the next morning. So anyway, look, I'm not going to ramble on about the weather. I do it all the time. We do have loud motorcycles around, but even the birds have been quiet this morning. I think they're just miserable. It's just there's no life at all. It's a miracle there's even plant life, that this isn't just some scorched, crappy area, that looks like something from Planet of the Apes. It's just that bad. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to get right into this car. This is a 1981 Imperial. Now, there's some debate about this. I did some research on this car last night because Malaise era personal luxury coupe Chryslers are not my specialty. Obviously, we all know they exist and whatnot. But frankly, I hadn't done one of these Imperials before, and I had to touch up on whatever it is that I already knew. And some sources will tell you that there was Imperial as a brand name from 1955 all the way through 1983, that Chrysler was not part of it, that it was just a branded Imperial. And other sources will tell you that this car, the 81, brought back the Chrysler Imperial. In fact, Hemmings does that, so which of course is a pretty good source. So it's really hard to tell. The only thing I can say with anecdotal evidence is I really don't see a Chrysler badge anywhere on this car. So Wikipedia might have it. They're the ones saying that this was an Imperial model, not a Chrysler Imperial, and that they didn't come back until later. So, look, you can correct me. I'm going to call this an Imperial. I'm not going to call it a Chrysler. And if it's the other way around, fine, whatever. It does have a Chrysler hood ornament on it, but whatever. It really doesn't matter. Obviously, it was made by the Chrysler Corporation. And this silver lump that I see through my fogged up glasses is probably it. Hopefully, I'm not filming Peter's enormous cat, which is probably just sitting there staring at me somewhere. Why doesn't it get the birds, I wonder? I really do have to wonder about that. Anyway, this is going to be a fairly quick review. I know that I say that all the time, and then it ends up being 40 minutes, but I really think this one is going to be a little bit quicker, and there's a good reason for that, because if you get into the true history of the Chrysler Imperial, For the most part, it focuses on things like coach builders, mechanical advancements, trim levels, tail fin redesigns, crown, turn signal points on top of this or that, and otherwise very specialized stuff. That's all, of course, very interesting, but not particularly interested to people who have sort of a casual look at the thing. I mean, you have to be a bit of an Imperial fan to be interested in all of that. So we're going to do a very quick overview instead of going model by model through the Imperial lineup, which could become actually quite tedious. But we'll go back to what its purpose was, and that was essentially to fight it out for second place with Lincoln since 1926 or so, behind Cadillac for the pinnacle of luxury cars, and that's what it did very well. It was founded by a guy named Walter P. Chrysler. Obviously, this is a guy who's going to found the Chrysler Motor Corporation. He had worked for Buick for quite a few years, suddenly got the entrepreneurial vibe, and started a company called Chrysler, and he was selling some pedestrian cars and having some success with it. They were very good at engineering. In fact, Chrysler actually had quite a reputation for engineering through many, many years and decades. But he wanted to compete. He was not happy with where he was at. He wanted to compete with some of the higher-end vehicles of the day. So he decided to create this car that would. And he called it the Imperial. And it was supposed to go up against Cadillacs and Continentals, Lincolns, Packards, Cords, Duesenbergs, Pierce Arrows. You know, they all had luxury features. They had high-quality manufacturing. They had very snazzy engines that would set, you know, endurance records. And frankly, the very good cars that the man produced created quite a name for himself, and they did very, very well. It set up the Imperial name for decades of success, with various generations of cars being driven by pretty successful and glamorous people. Imperial just had a name. And, you know, they were beautiful, and this went on for quite a few years, and they did well, but as time marched on, Chrysler would run into money problems, and as a result, Imperial would run into manufacturing problems. You get into sort of the 50s were fine. You get into the 60s, they start to wane a little bit. You get into the mid-60s, they start to get manufacturing problems. They're, you know, being bought by people who are familiar with the Imperial name and saw it as a sign of quality, and they get the thing home, and it just isn't what it's supposed to be, and that was a shame. They got a little bit of that back in the late 60s. I believe the 69 model was actually quite good, and sold very well and was a great piece. But of course, Chrysler again started trending towards poor financial management, and in 1975 they hung up the Imperial name. They made the last Imperial because frankly they were scrabbling for money. Having a halo car, a super high-end car like the Imperial that wasn't selling well and wasn't creating much of a profit just didn't make sense. Come in a guy named Lee Iacocca. We end up talking about him a lot in these videos, and I'm not sure it's just because I do some Malaise era Chryslers, but yeah, anyway. Lee Iacocca comes to Chrysler, and he's going to turn the whole damn thing around. He comes in, I want to say 1978, and then 79 he entrenched his power. And the Imperial was already on the board at that point. It was already going to be made. And, you know, it was such a failure, this car, that Iacocca later decided to sort of distance himself from it and say that it wasn't his idea, which is technically true. But I think it is without question that the man embraced this car with aplomb. He absolutely, I mean, it's inarguable. And look, I think here's why. Iacocca had, you know, he's known for like the minivan and the Mustang and that sort of thing, but one of his greatest successes was the Lincoln Mark III. And that was where he decided to take a Thunderbird and put a Rolls-Royce grill on it and, you know, up some of the features and materials and that sort of thing and sell it for a pretty big profit. And that he did. The Mark III was a tremendous success. It made a lot of money for Lincoln. So, boom, all of a sudden Iacocca's in Chrysler, and he's thinking, wow, I can relive that. I can relive that great victory with this Imperial, this personal luxury coupe that will have the lineage of the Mark III, if you will. He even assembled some of the old Mark III team to help put it together. And so they did. It was built on the Cordoba frame, new for 1980, the Cordoba, which, again, I have one, and I promise it's coming up at some point. It's just very tough to get cars through the shop right now. But anyways, a J body. It was new for 1980, and the Imperial was going to ride on that, and Chrysler went with it. And they went with it in full force. I mean, beyond question. They used, you know, you could call it badge engineering because it's riding on the Cordoba frame, but that's not really fair. It had all different sheet metal, which was absolutely radical. It was thicker. It was designed for noise control and harshness control. And Chrysler, you know, at a time when they were really scrabbing for money, went after the Imperial with full force. And that was, you know, whether or not it worked for him, I think you can say it didn't. Anyway, if you have a look at this car, it's got some really nifty lines. I mean, you've got these sharp knife-edge fenders, you've got hidden headlamps, you've got a sloped grille that frankly reminds me a little bit of the Mark III. Everywhere you see are all these sharp creases. And then we get to the most distinguishing feature of this car, which is the bustle back, as they call it. It's inarguably drawn from the 1980 Seville, the garbage truck Seville, if you will. I know some people are going to be pissed off I use that, but it's true. It has this bustle back as the Seville did. You can see the mist on the hood, and I don't care. It just is what it is. And I think one could argue that they did it, Chrysler did it more elegantly than Cadillac did. It's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more reminiscent of the Daimlers and Rolls-Royces of the 50s and 60s, and it suited the lines of the car, I think, quite well in a way that the Seville didn't. Now, where I'm at right now, I can see the sun is really coming out. It's going to cause a lot of glare. It's going to annoy the hell out of me. So I'm going to pause it for a minute, back the car up to a shadier area, and then we're just going to keep going. All right, that's a little bit better. So anyway, you've got, you know, the late 70s, everything's in development. Iacocca's there. He's kicking some ass. He's got the K car in development. That's going to be the little fecky front-wheel drive platform that they base a bunch of cars on and eventually save Chrysler with. But you know, he looks around and he wants something to compete with Cadillac and Lincoln. And there's the Imperial name on the shelf. He's got all this Mark III history floating around his head, and he just has visions of grandeur. So, you know, this program is already in the works. He decides to embrace it, despite what he may say later on. He definitely embraced it. And the Seville, what it competed with, the Imperial moved forward. It received as much luxury and tech as Chrysler had in him. I mean, it got everything that they had to throw at it, and a price tag that would shame a Rockefeller. I mean, this thing, again, lots of different shit on the web about when you look around. I mean, the thing either stickered at right around 19 or right around 21, and for the sake of argument, I'm going to go with 21 because it's a bigger number and it's more fun. So it costs more than 10 grand over what a New Yorker cost, which was the next most expensive car in the Chrysler lineup. You could buy 3 K cars for one Imperial, so the thing was pretty damn expensive. It cost more than most Lincolns and Cadillacs at the time. I think the Seville cost more, and obviously some of the Fleetwood limousines. I'm not sure there was a more expensive Lincoln. And, you know, one could argue, okay, we've got the Malaise era, we've got Jimmy Carter, we've got everything getting downsized, we've got, you know, gas issues all around, emissions. That, you know, was it the right time for a person luxury coupe when you've got little Japanese cars like Honda and Toyota absolutely skyrocketing in popularity from being sort of also-rans a decade before, and they did it based on like front-wheel drive and air conditioning that worked, and, you know, reliability and good economy. So, but yes, actually, one could argue that it was a fantastic time for a person luxury coupe of a very high caliber. For one thing, Lincoln had absolutely blown it with the Mark VI. That car was a shadow of its of the car it replaced. It was not liked, it was not beloved, and people didn't dig it at all. So a lot of Lincoln buyers were kind of pissed off and probably could be coaxed to look elsewhere. Cadillac had the Eldorado, another, you know, nice-looking person luxury coupe, which was quite a competitor. But yeah, I'm not going to say it was boring because it wasn't, but it was certainly certainly conservative, and not really, you know, it's the kind of thing a lawyer or banker might get, but certainly not a high-end pimp or, you know, somebody who worked in a casino. There really wasn't anything out on the high end for guys like that. So there was definitely a slot that this Imperial could fit into, and you know, had it been a good car, then it might have actually worked. But we'll get into that in a minute. So the shit that they put in this thing was shocking. It had singular pricing, so there was just one sticker price. The only option you could get was a sunroof, which was like $1,000. Otherwise, you just got you paid the one price, and you got to choose from different wheels or stereos or fabrics or that sort of thing. But there was Mark Cross leather you could have. There was a real fancy velvety velour stuff you could have. The hood ornament was a Pentastar made of Cartier crystal. I mean, Chrysler was just not fucking around here. They were making something pretty damn special. It would be the last V8 engined rear drive Imperial, which of course came from a long line of very fancy, you know, big power rear drive Imperials. Later on, in like, I want to say 1990, they came out with another Imperial, but that was sort of a K-car based front wheel drive thing, and it did marginally better than this one, but, you know, was certainly still an absolute failure. So the Imperial name just took a dive for Chrysler after a certain point, and just has never been. Oh, it just never came back. It's a shame. It would have been nice if it had. But this one, it had torsion bar, inverse torsion bar front suspension, as did many Chrysler. You know, I get a lot of crap on that Tornado video because I say it was the first car to have torsion bars, the first American car. I actually know Chrysler had torsion bars for years. It was the first GM to have torsion bars. I find out that sometimes you have to get very specific in these videos, or people really correct the hell out of you, which is fine. You know, like yesterday, I made a slip of the tongue and said the AMC, what the hell did I do yesterday? The AMC Matador had two V6 engines. Man, you would think that I attacked the, you know, Constitution of the United States with a flamethrower. I mean, people came after me and said they were all inline sixes. Well, I actually knew that. It's just a slip of the tongue. You know, it happens sometimes. And then, again, there's a lot of shit I don't know, and I make mistakes, but god damn, people are brutal. And anyway, I suppose it's good for posterity. But anyway, the last V8 Chrysler, the last rear drive, inverse torsion bars, very, very smooth. The whole suspension was tuned to be smooth at highway speeds, soak up bumps, be very quiet, you know, using the heavier flies. I fucking hate flies. Jeez, they're back. Get out of here. You'd think the birds would eat the damn flies, honestly. I mean, they torture me enough. Why don't they help me out with a little fly eating? Anyway, you see, and then I just lose my train of thought, getting pissed off over the flies. But anyway, the underpinnings were very, very smooth and very, very lush and quiet and nice. The extra sheet metal that it wore over the Cordoba was all designed to keep harshness down. So it drove and felt like a big car, despite being 2 feet shorter and 800 pounds less than the Imperial that had come before it in 1975. So it was still definitely a downsized car. And it was just very, very posh. It was, you know, you look at the car, it has terrific lines, very, very attractive, and extremely posh. This is going to come back as we get into the video. This was the first Chrysler to use electronic fuel injection, which was a big deal at the time, had been tested extensively, and was one of the crown jewels of the engineering in the Imperial, and it had been tested for years and years, and Iacocca was so sure of it. Apparently, when he was at Ford, one of the things he was always jealous of was kind of the engineering at Chrysler, which was supposed to be very good. And here he is now at Chrysler. He gets to have that engineering department, and wow, he is going to put it to use. And in goes the fuel injection into the Imperial. It also was the first to have digital instrumentation, the 3-speed automatic, and you had torque flight, very, very smooth, and it just had a great boulevard ride. Frank Sinatra was a friend of Lee Iacocca, so that's kind of an interesting, you know, you don't see the two of them together, but But he was, and apparently Lee Iacocca convinced Sinatra to sort of sponsor the Imperial. In fact, there's a famous ad campaign saying it's Imperial time, which came from an interview with Iacocca and Sinatra. It's gone on to do other things at this point, that phrase. But anyway, Sinatra gets involved. Iacocca actually convinces him to officially license a version of the Imperial called the Frank Sinatra edition of all things, which was finished in a sort of an azure blue color, you know, old Blue Eyes, with blue interior with either velvet or leather. And it would come with a special center console with a selection of Frank Sinatra's cassette tapes in it. And obviously Frank would drive one of these things around. And again, if Lee Iacocca wasn't so sure of the Imperial and hadn't put his heart and soul behind it, it's hard to believe that he would have enlisted Frank Sinatra to help him out with it. And that car cost like $1 or $2 grand more than the regular versions. And we're just talking about a shocking amount of money back in 1981. But anyway, the car was it was well more than a puffed-up Cordoba. It really was a big deal for Chrysler at the time, and a real effort at building a premium luxury car. It was tested way more than other Chryslers. They did a high-pressure leak test, an electronics check, an engine check, front-end alignment. They did retorqued all the bolts underneath. It was taken on a 5.5-mile road trip by technicians at the end of it to make sure everything was good. And it just, all in all, was set out there as a terrific car. There were actually some NASCARs that ran with the Imperial body. A guy named Buddy Arrington, he drove the Imperials on the super speedway. I think he drove Dodge Muratas otherwise, but the Imperial had better aerodynamics, so probably the only Imperial in history to ever run down the NASCAR tracks, which, it's just kind of neat. Anyway, they're very, very rare, these cars now. They didn't quite get to 13,000 of them made. There was like 7,000 the first year, and then it just precipitously fell off to almost nothing. Why? I mean, again, you can't say that it's because of the styling. The styling is actually quite beautiful. And I don't think you can say it's because of the timing, because, again, Lincoln had screwed up, Cadillac was being pretty conservative, and there was a definite market segment that would have accepted a thing like the Imperial. There's also people with money, that want to have something that's kind of exclusive and cool. Chrysler said it was going to limit production on these to 25,000 cars. They wish they'd gotten that high. So what was the problem? And the problem basically was that the car didn't run. And truly, that was the one thing, the absolute one thing that it had to do was run, and it didn't pull that off. It turned out that the fuel injection system that they used, tested though it was, ended up being intensely problematic, and it would stall out, it would sputter, it would, choke itself at traffic lights. In fact, famously, Frank Sinatra got embarrassed in his Imperial, leaving somewhere. The car choked out and stalled, and at that moment in time, he said, "To hell with it. This thing's a turd. I am taking my name off the cars, and they can go to hell." That's why there was only Sinatra editions in 81 and 82. They were gone for 83. So apparently friendship only goes so far. But that was the big issue with the car. People started to trade them in. They didn't like them. Chrysler went into a panic. They came up with a $3,500. Think about this. That would even be expensive now, but back then it was shocking. $3,500 carburetor retrofit on a recall that you could take your car into Chrysler. It involved the fuel tank, the lines, the carburetor, a new instrument panel, all kinds of shit to make it work, and the cars just became an absolute nightmare for Iacocca. And I think the average cost of warranty work was like 10 grand back then, so they lost a fortune on these things, and they were unceremoniously scrapped in 1983. So once they got the carburetor in them, as this one did, they actually run pretty damn good and they're fine. But, there aren't many, in fact, out there that still have the old fuel injection. But that was it. I mean, at that level of car, people who are paying Mercedes-level money, they want a car that's going to go down the road and not give them too many problems. And unfortunately, the fuel injection system from Chrysler just murdered that, and that was the end of it. So that's why you don't see too many of them now. Again, less than 13,000 made. So what was bad for Chrysler has actually become pretty damn good for collectors, because obviously quite a few of them got used up and scrapped. I don't know if maybe even half remain, probably far less than that. So it's just not a car that you see very often, and when you do, it's kind of interesting because, again, the styling, just absolutely beautiful for the day, I think. And even today, it was even vintage when it came out in '81. I mean, obviously it looked very sleek and aerodynamic, but things even in '81 were getting a little bit more rounded and Europeanized, and this didn't have any of that. So another interesting feature, by the way, is they did not come with vinyl roofs. Could not get a vinyl roof on one of these things, which you would think the traditional buyer would want. So anyway, there it is. I'm going to pause for a minute. I may move the car forward again into somewhere where the sun isn't killing me, and then we're just going to get right into this car. So like I promised, this one's going to be kind of short. Alright, so now we've got the police coming somewhere. Honestly, I hope they're coming for me for some reason so they can take me off to jail, which I'm sure is air-conditioned. It's like 70 degrees at taxpayer expense. I also get a nice meal for lunch and, you know, the attention of some friendly inmate. But anyway, look, forget it. We're just going to get back into this thing, and I'm going to stop with my strange rambling thoughts. The Imperial name, and this is just very quick before we get right into this car, never really got the success, at least in the latter half of the 20th century, that Chrysler wanted it to. It never managed to completely separate itself from Chrysler, which was what they wanted to do in '55 when they made it an Imperial mark. You know, they wanted it to become like Lincoln, separate from Ford, a luxury car, but they just didn't pull it off, partially because they didn't have the funds. They didn't really have the dealer support network. Pretty much every Imperial was sold at a Chrysler dealership. I mean, they may have had Imperial nameplates up on the wall, but you're still basically buying a Chrysler Imperial, and everybody knew it. And that was, probably one of the problems why Imperial never got the panache that a Lincoln, or never mind a Cadillac, did. So, and that, of course, continued to current, and why the name has basically vanished, which I think is a shame. It's nice that it's on the shelf. Maybe they'll pull it back out for something, but let's just get into this car. So you've got this very sleek front end with hidden headlamps, which I think is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The grille reminds me a little bit of the Rolls-Royce grille on the Mark III. Don't know if that's Iacocca or not, or just his team, but probably. I like the way it continues past the chrome top of the bumper and opens up again in the middle of the bumper where it V's forward. I think that's really cool. I've also took a video this morning of the lights operating, which is rare on these things, and frankly, after I bought the car, I had to have them fixed. So, you know, very often you just don't see them working. They do in this car, and I think that's pretty cool. So I'll put that in at the beginning of the video. You can see it. I do like the angular way the hood goes back and widens. I love the knife edge, crisp fenders that overhang the headlamps. I just think it's a very, very attractive and creased and lovely front end of the car, and they sure did make a lot out of the Cordoba platform. It's got the snowflake wheels, which I think look pretty good. The alloys, you had your choice of wires or simulated wires or the snowflakes, and I'm glad whoever bought this one opted for the snowflakes. Even though it has very low miles, 19,000 on this thing, it does have pretty modern white walls, and they're pretty hard to get these days. Most of the white walls are gone. You have to go to a few specific brands to get them. Again, you can see an Imperial badge on the fender, nothing about Chrysler. You can see electronic fuel injection badge right beneath it. That was the death knell for this car. I think it's shocking that this has a fixed antenna. I really do. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy and maybe somebody put this in and it replaced an original power antenna, but I don't think so, because I looked at a few of the photos around the web and saw other Imperials that had the same antenna sticking up. And I can't imagine how Chrysler would make what was then a shockingly expensive car, more than, again, almost any Lincoln or Cadillac. And the thing has a fixed, unscrewable antenna. I think that's quite strange. A lovely use of chrome, however, nice around the wheel wells. You've got a chrome strip down the rockers. You've got a chrome impact strip. You've got chrome door handles with body color inserts. Lovely chrome around all the window openings, the windshield. You've got hidden wipers. You've got beautiful little muted chrome mirrors that are lovely to look at. You've got these giant carriage lights on the side with the Pentastar on them. Maybe that's a Chrysler, or maybe that's where they get that. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, there it is. You've got little opera windows, and actually maybe they're too big to be opera windows. If they are, they're oversized opera windows. And there's that famous line swooping down in a very angular way from the top of the roof down past the deck lid into that bustle front end, which I think, rear end, criminy. Which I think looks quite nice. You've also got a lovely chrome strip around the tail lamps, which are kind of muted. I'm torn on the way that the license plate frame went up above that and kind of hugs the middle of the back of the deck lid. I think it looks a little bit high and awkward, but it also looks special and weird, and maybe that's what they were going for. I just think all in all it's an attractive car, and I do like the chrome insert that the license plate sits in. You can see it came from Harry Lane in Knoxville. Nice to see the original dealer sticker still on there. And there's the Imperial badge, sans Chrysler. So again, I have a feeling that this is just an Imperial, despite what Hemmings may say. We've also got Chrysler keys here. I thought the original ones were Crystal, but maybe that was just one set that isn't with the car, and these definitely look original to it, the way they are. It has these very small little keyhole, almost reminiscent of a Rolls-Royce or a European car to me. Instead of having some big over-swank thing with a big lift-off, it's just a tiny little keyhole, which I think is nice. Sorry for all my crap in the back, but it is what it is. So you've got this very nicely finished trunk. When I bought this thing, like, it must have come from the same seller I bought another one from, because it also has one of these big made-out printed things. They actually got the miles wrong on the car. It's not 12K, it's actually 19K, and we'll get into that in a second. The rest of it is all correct. I knew it was 19 when I bought it, but who are you going to argue with? How many Imperials are you going to find? This is a weird little chrome strip here. There's almost no reason for it that I can tell other than decorative, and yeah, that's kind of nice. You also have a finished trunk bottom with the black carpet, which is lovely, and over here you've got nicely hidden compartment with a little temporary spare. Over here you've got a little carpet thing covering your unsightly jack, so you can put that up and cover it. This came with some pamphlets. Iacocca wishes he could have this thing back. The electronic marvel. That is funny. And here it is. It's time for Imperial. And yeah, there's the car itself in this color combo. And all the different features, colors you could get. Kind of neat to see all this stuff with the car. More time for Imperial stuff. And still more. And there's Frank Sinatra talking about his Imperial FS, Frank Sinatra edition. So anyway, a nice big functional usable trunk in here, and there's drips going on my glasses. So now they're not just fogged, there's little streaks of drippy sweat on them. Anyway, everything nice there. And then you've got a little Imperial quality engineered Chrysler Corporation badge. At this price, like the Cadillacs, I think it should have had a soft closed trunk with a suck down, but yeah, what are you going to do? You also get one of these little locking keyholes on the gas cap, which is quite nice. Alright, so there's a squeaky door. You have a little white lithium on that. What a beautiful, richly finished interior this car had. And of course it had to for the price point. And it did not fail. You can see those beautiful leather seats. That's Mark Cross leather. He featured in some of the ads for the car with lovely chrome trim around them. That big, crazy hinge-looking thing on the side. Badges on the skid plate. Just very, very attractive. Door panels, again, very nicely finished. Big leather inserts here, more faux wood with a little door pull. A variety of, honestly, ultra confusing switches, because here are your windows way back here. Your seat, it looks like you have 4 windows, but you don't. This is the seat, and this is the tilt, and up here are the mirrors, and here are the... It just gets confusing. I'm always adjusting the seat instead of putting a window down. This is the most ludicrous deep pile carpeting. Look how deep my thumb goes into that. I mean, it's... I read someone on the web, he said it should have been called faux orangutan fur instead of deep pile carpeting, and it's true. I mean, it's like a sheepdog in this car. I have never seen carpeting that thick before. It's absolutely insane. Let's see how the Canadians are going to feel in the back. I would have to say that they're going to be chipper as hell. Sorry the sun has beaten that up, but you see all this deep pile carpeting. It's really meant for 2, but you can fit 3 in there, as of course the Canadians will do. And everything nice and chipper in the rear with that deep pile carpeting. You also have a rather huge package shelf, so you'll be able to fit all kinds of crap back there. Anyway, this is going to be my favorite time, because it's when I get in the car. I'm wiping myself off, and turn the damn air conditioning on. So let's do that. More of the Chrysler upside down key stuff. I've never quite understood that, but I guess it's one of their features. Alright, so there you see that 318 firing right to life. Let's get a little AC going. I had the heat on full to defrost the window. There was another suspicious guy in the comment section for, I think it was the town car, wondering why was it on full heat, you know. He even wrote like 4 M's in it, you know, because obviously the thing was overheating, so I had to put it over to heat to make sure it didn't. Of course, I'm, you know, hammering it through the streets with the air conditioning on, and then running 90 on the interstate, and it's not overheating then, but it must have overheated before I drove it. It had nothing to do with the defrost. Anyway, you know, I get it. Everyone wants to be a bring a trailer commenter. Anyway, here is that fancy digital dash that came out and was the first in a Chrysler product. And it was actually pretty good. You see you've got your clock over there in the corner. You can press date. There's your date. You get the odometer. Now you see the little asterisk between odo and miles. That signifies that this cluster was replaced under the recall program when they did the carburetor, call it an upgrade, downgrade, whatever you want to call it. But that was part of that $3,500 carburetor retrofit that necessitated it getting a new instrument cluster. God, that must have cost them a fortune. And then you have to add it to the miles that are on a sticker inside the door, because frankly, otherwise there aren't that many records, you know, hanging around. But this sticker was attached, and when you look close, you can see that it had 6,000, just under 7,000 miles when it was done in 1985, which puts the actual mileage on this car right around 19. And that is truly the way that Chrysler officially did it. No dealer set new miles on the clock to match the old one. So there's probably a few of these things running around where people are claiming lower miles than they have, like this one when I bought it. But you know, if you don't know, then you're going to end up with a car you think has much lower miles than it does. You know, having run 12,000 miles since 1985, when the conversion was done under recall, after warranty, but under recall, you can see that it does, of course, still have pretty damn low miles. What is that? Timer. And the phone goes crazy inside my pocket, absolutely crazy. And I think it's because of the humidity. If it was drier, I wouldn't think people were touching it. But anyway, you've got your lights over here. You pull those, they'll come on. You got those real cool brake and hood releases down here. Hood, you pull. Actually, I never opened the damn hood. Let me do that. Holy cow. How the hell did we miss that? It shows you. Brain isn't working the way it used to, honestly, if it ever did. So this is hard to do one-handed, like every other damn thing. And oh God, Sorry about that. All right, well, there it is anyway. So here is basically a very traditional Chrysler 318 engine. The part that wasn't traditional was the electronic fuel injection on top of it, but of course that's now been rectified with the recall. So if you open up that air cleaner underneath, you're going to find the replacement carburetor. That was, of course, very expensive to do. Under here, it's what you'd expect from a super low mileage car, all in very good shape, functional air conditioning that's terrific, and everything looking just fine. And, you know, truly, V8 power, 318, you know, torque flight, rear drive. It's a very traditional Mopar product. And with the carb, they actually make pretty damn good cruisers. So everything looking nice and proper under the hood of the car. I'm going to get back into it. God, I love that pillow leather. I really do. This is my kind of car. It reminds me a lot of the 85 Buick I had, the Riviera. One of my first cars, and honestly, just one that I loved. Let me try to get back into shade. So, okay, so there. Anyway, there it is. You've got your fuel mileage there. You can do a distance to empty thing. Where's that range? How did we get that? There it is. We got 57 miles left before we're empty. Something like, I think it's more than that, to be honest, with 12 gallons. It was showing more than that before I put gas in it. Incandescent bulb warning lights that give you, you know, volts, temp, oil, that sort of thing. It would have been nice if they gave you like oil pressure and stuff, but what are you going to do? It had a 85 mile an hour speedometer, just like the rest of the Malaise products. Actually, interestingly, the Odo went up to 199, so more than other Odos at the time. It didn't just flip over at 99,000. And this was probably the first instance of box over PRN 21 in history. This is the way it looks in so many cars now, is the little digital PRN indicator. And there it is. This may have been the first one that had the box, so when you move it, the box goes over the gear that you're in. This is cool. This is so 1980s. It's got a rear amp. Speaker's a little scratchy, but what are you gonna do? Alright, so we got the Who going. Let's tune that in better. And then if you hit the rear amp, boom, you get some added juice in the back, and I think that's neat. In this car, they also opted for the optional, well, it wasn't optional, you could just pick it, but it was actually, I believe, their top-of-the-line choice was the CB, and I believe it works, but how the hell do you get it on? CB, all right, we press that. Is this the, there's the channel 17. Yeah, so you know, breaker, oh my God. All right, there's some feedback, which I'm not gonna play with, but yeah, there it is. So this thing does have probably one of the last CBs put in cars into the A. Probably 85 was the last time you could get a CB, and it was probably in a Cadillac. But anyway, all very cool stuff, and I'm going to turn that back off. You had a climate control where you could just select the temperature. It probably should have been more digital at the time, but it's probably the best they could come up with. And then you've got a cigarette lighter. Looks like this was a non-smoker car, and a nice big ashtray, because again, this was still the 1980s. You go over here and you've got a glove box with a trunk release, and there's an owner's manual inside. Up here, a very standard looking mirror, some whatever the hell they are, interior lights. This is interesting. It had a garage door opener, one of the first built into the car, one of the very first HomeLink systems. And I don't know what this is, Chrysler security code. I only saw this on my way here this morning when I looked at that, and actually we don't have lights working in here. Low and high, I'll have to have a look at that. But anyway, I have no idea what that is. I'm gonna have to look it up and see what the Chrysler security code is all about. Obviously, we also have a mirror over on the passenger side for your red hot seat cover on your way to the nightclub. You've got tilt wheel, which is nice, cruise control, nice proper, I think we had a horn, didn't we? I heard that a minute ago. Yeah, there we go. Nice proper horn, and yeah, everything pretty lovely. Let's go for a spin. I do like the way that crystal hood ornament leads the way as well. Alright, and Dalton did a shit job on the windshield. It looks good from here, but it's actually shit. So I'm going to pause it and pick it up again at the end of the street. So these cars were not known for their breakneck acceleration. I mean, we are talking peak Malaise in 1981. I want to say it's like 140 horse or 150 horse 318. I mean, there's just not much oomph behind it. But you know, it's still a V8. It still has some torque. It still gets up and goes enough to move you down the boulevard. It was geared very high for highway and not, you know, stoplight acceleration. So, of course, that's another inhibitor on your, you know, breakneck acceleration. The steering is very over-assisted, very luxurious, what you'd expect from a high-end luxury car at the time that was catering to an older clientele. The brakes did not throw you through the windshield, but they were, you know, well-assisted and certainly good enough to bring the car down to a stop. It just did not have any performance vibes to it at all, and of course it didn't need to. It just wasn't the point of the car. It was meant to be a boulevard cruiser to get you from, you know, home to the high-end casino, the massage parlor, the whorehouse, the golf course, you know, wherever it is old guys go when they're you know, looking to fill the time. And that's what it was all about. And of course that's why Frank Sinatra ended up with one, and just sort of fit that whole Vegas lifestyle. It was flashy, you know, it was flashy, and it was obviously expensive. And if the damn thing had just run with that fuel injection, it probably would have been a pretty successful car for them, at least on a micro level, a halo car type thing, and might have helped Chrysler in the long run. Might have even saved the Imperial name from a, you know, K-car banishment in the future, which it just seemed like a shame. So anyway, you've got that lovely crystal hood star leading the way, big long creased hood, you know, nice thin leather strap, leather wrapped steering wheel. It just feels lovely to drive, the same way that my 85 Buick did. I could just lean back in the seat, recline, you know, cruise gently from stoplight to stoplight, letting the world pass by in a hurry, while I just have the time of my life ensconced on Mark Cross leather and feeling pretty posh and happy with myself. And frankly, I think that's one of the reasons these make pretty damn good collectibles, is they're very nice to drive, they're very nice to cruise, and frankly, being a 318 with a carburetor, torque flight, rear wheel drive, disc brakes off of Cordoba, all the parts are cheap. They're easy to keep going. The only issue is body panels and such. You know, they really don't have a lot of support for them in the aftermarket. So as long as you don't crack it up against anything and have to fix the body, virtually all of the mechanicals you can get from the Advanced Auto Parts store. And that's a very nice feature in a collectible car. Acura right in my ass here. So anyway, look, there it is. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. You get the point. The car is what it is. This is a 81... I'm going to call it an Imperial. You got another badge over there, no sign of Chrysler anywhere. I think Hemming's got this one wrong. I think this is truly an Imperial mark and not a Chrysler Imperial, even if that's the way everybody thinks of it. So really appreciate you having a look. I know we've been doing a lot of yank tanks lately, as some of you call them. I've got a Euro car coming up. I've got a beautiful Mercedes CL 550, one of the few modern Mercedes that I actually like a lot. And we're going to do a run on that. I don't know if this vacuum fluorescent display is flashing, and the frame rate of the camera sometimes make it look like the digital displays flash. So it's not. It's nice and steady the way it is now and what you'd expect. So all very lovely. Anyway, this one's available at Auto House of Naples, 239-263-8500, on the web at autohousenaples.com. Thank you so much for having a look. Really appreciate it, and we will see you with the next one. Take care.